Hey everyone! Tonight we're diving into the story of the Tapestry of Falling Stars. But before you settle in, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe only if you truly enjoy this kind of content. I would love to know where you are watching from and what time it is for you, so drop that in the comments. It's always amazing seeing people from all over the world tuning in. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that cozy background, and let's drift into tonight's story together. The air is dim and golden, like honey stirred into tea. You stand at the threshold of a quiet stone hall, where time behaves itself slow, deliberate, almost too polite to pass. The candlelight quivers lazily against worn granite walls, making the shadows yawn and stretch across the flagstone floor. Her fingers move with the kind of slow certainty you normally only see in monks or cats. She doesn't look up. The loom is twice her height, its wooden beams blackened by centuries of breath and touch. Threads of sheep's wool, dyed in faded crimsons and muted lapis, are pulled taut across it. Above her, a finished tapestry hangs rich with stars, moons, suns that rise sideways, and what you eventually realize are comets, stitched with near-holy patience into the sky. You can smell the faint mix of wool, old wax, and the sort of dust that seems to hum with secrets. If silence had a sound, it would be this. Your shoes make no sound as you walk in. You didn't plan on being here. Nobody does, not really. But here you are. The one she's working on now seems to focus on a comet, a long-tailed brushstroke, descending through embroidered clouds. A medieval weaving hall, somewhere between history and half-sleep, where dreams and memory unravel at roughly the same speed. You might not make it through this day, to be honest, but don't worry, that's kind of the point. Her hands work slowly. You notice she wears small silver bells on her sleeves. A massive piece, nearly sagging under its own woolen weight. A comet arcs dramatically across the top third, followed underneath by neat rows of cottages, a few spooked chickens, and what appears to be a priest fainting into a cabbage cart. Every motion makes them tinkle softly, like the stars are laughing at a joke you haven't heard yet. Somewhere deep inside the tapestry, the stars keep falling. Turns out, it just marked the beginning of a fairly dramatic Tuesday. Meanwhile, a farmer named Eliason nearby declared the same comet foretold the death of his favorite goat. In fairness, both events occurred. Historians still debate whether the goat or the Pope had a greater impact. Near the back of the hall, a woman sits hunched over a massive vertical loom. Welcome. You're in 13th century Burgundy, or what's left of it in your half-dreaming state. The village doesn't appear on any current map, not because it was lost, just ignored, kind of like your emails. A soft voice, the weaver's, breaks the silence without lifting her gaze. They say the stars fall for kings, but they land on peasants. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. We love seeing how far our little woolen skies stretch. That's your cue. Like and subscribe if your eyes aren't too heavy. It helps us keep the candles lit. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. Outside the small leaded windows, evening is tumbling across the fields in shades of blue that even the weaver can't capture. But she tries. You sit down nearby. The floor is surprisingly warm. Each tapestry in this hall is a sky, and each sky holds a story, though not necessarily in order. Back then, you see, comets weren't just celestial visitors. They were messages, possibly complaints. In 1264, Pope Urban IV reportedly took a comet as a divine nod to his papal election. Modest, really. The weaver pulls golden thread through the dark velvet of night. One tapestry near the hearth catches your eye. This actually happened. In 1293, during a meteor shower, a clergyman in Chartres collapsed mid-sermon, believing the stars falling from heaven marked the end of days. Each comet means something, the weaver murmurs, but they never leave a forwarding address. Outside, a rooster crows. It's night. You don't ask. Inside, the rhythm of the loom begins to soothe your breath. The shuttle slides. The wool hums. The tapestry grows thread by thread, sky by sky. And you, lulled by the creak of wood and the whisper of thread, astrologers weren't just mystics. They were court advisors. Nobles consulted them for war dates. This one is simpler, she chuckles. The Great Bakery Fire of 1289. They blamed it on an evil comet tail. Almost childlike. It shows a small village with one oddly oversized sheep, a few shooting stars, and a wide-eyed baker holding up what looks like a burning loaf of bread. Hence why so many heavenly skies were just beige. Beige heavens. Very inspirational. Wedding days, and occasionally whether they should invest in a third castle, despite already being deeply in debt. One monk's diary mentioned a comet shaped like a goat's tail, seen above a monastery. Each revolution wraps another bit of wool into the weft of the universe. Time slows. Thoughts thin. The tapestry, however, shows what looks like a cheerful dog with fire shooting from its rear. Or maybe it's just one of the weaver's sleeve bells playing tricks again. Like the world has agreed to slow down for a moment, just long enough for you to catch up with yourself. Begin, that might be Halley's Comet, which visited in 1301 and caused quite the kerfuffle across Europe. In Florence and above you, in cloth skies older than memory, the stars continue to fall gently, beautifully, without apology. An artist named Giotto painted it as the Star of Bethlehem in a nativity fresco. An elegant bit of artistic revisionism, really. Nothing says holy birth like a giant space rock. Every stone has seen things: weddings, star charts, angry pigeons, probably a few love letters that never got read. One corner of the room holds a basket of unused threads, some dyed with walnut husks, others with rare crushed beetles. You can almost hear the beetles protesting. To see how the stars once ordered the world, or at least gave people something to blame when everything went sideways. The weaver doesn't speak much, but when she does, she says, "We didn't say, 'What a strange coincidence.' We said, 'Ah, the stars have spoken.'" The apprentice got promoted. The scent is earthy and oddly reassuring, like being hugged by a sheep with good intentions. Life was confusing that way. It comes out soft and slow, as if she's untangling her own memory with every word. Back then, in medieval France, you remember the comet in the tapestry, long-tailed and smug-looking. The weaver nods toward a smaller tapestry on the wall. Ah, yes. Turns out, a comet had appeared days before, and the baker's apprentice had dozed off during night watch. The sky got the blame. You feel a tickle of wool dust in your nose. The walls here breathe quietly. "Do you know?" the weaver asks. "That blue was once worth more than gold?" It's true. Ultramarine pigment, made from lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan, was so costly that entire tapestries would go blue-less unless a rich patron insisted. She laughs under her breath. a sound like paper folding, and it makes you wonder how many dreams were stitched in browns and grays, simply because the stars were out of budget? Historians still debate whether some of these celestial depictions were artistic liberty or desperate improvisation. Your eyes drift to the spindle of the loom as it spins. The wind rustles faintly outside. A distant bell tolls. The candles sputter slightly. A moth bumps against the stone. Everything feels like it's moving, but barely. You lean back. The floor is still warm. Your heartbeat matches the loom's rhythm. You stir slightly, though you haven't moved much. Tuneless melody. It's not for you. It's for the loom. The warmth of the stone floor has seeped into your bones, which by now feel older than the hall itself. You watch as the weaver adjusts a new thread. Imagine getting fan mail from the sky. This one dyed in a color that doesn't quite exist anymore, somewhere between early plum and melancholy. The loom creaks. She continues. She hums a low. There was a time, she says quietly, soft and uncertain. You watch her as she walks each step careful, ceremonial, like someone who knows the stars, or at least how to stitch them down before they wriggle away. You suspect she isn't just warming the room, but feeding it. The candles flicker. You catch the scent of lavender and singed wool. When people thought comets were made of fire and wind, as if the gods had sneezed, of course, remain skeptical. You blink slowly. You feel your own breath slow to match the weaving. Just before the Battle of Hastings, Halley's comet again made an appearance. You hadn't noticed it before an orange blur tucked in a nest of yarn. It doesn't wake. Cats in medieval times, you recall, were both beloved and suspicious. Some believed they were witches' spies. Others just liked how they kept the rats in check. Depends on the day, really. People didn't call it Halley's yet. That name wouldn't come for centuries. But to the Anglo-Saxons, it meant doom, where men in fur-trimmed robes squint upwards at a giant streak in the sky. Below them, a monk scribbles something into a scroll, clearly trying to look busy. For William the Conqueror, it meant great marketing. He had it embroidered right into the Bayeux Tapestry, a woolen prophecy with extra drama. They called them hairy stars, stars with long tails. And every time one appeared, someone wrote a letter of concern to the king. In 1066, you glance around this hall and can't help but smile. Everything is woolen prophecy here. Then points to the monk's tiny stitched face. That's Brother Eloy. He claimed to have predicted the comet using only onions and a bowl of water. They made him head of the weather committee. The tapestry in progress now shows an open field. The weaver pauses her shuttle. Historians? A breeze moves through the window. By the hearth, a cat stretches and shifts in its sleep. The weaver rises slowly to stoke the fire. There's a quiet pride in her movement. She returns with a spool of thread dyed with madder root. A dull red almost rust, almost rose. You know, she says, when a comet came, people locked their chickens inside. You raise an eyebrow. They thought hens might start laying eggs with no yolks. Or worse, tiny snakes. People had strong feelings about cosmic poultry. She shrugs, as if to say, you weren't there. Don't judge. The tapestry sky is growing darker now, layered with thread upon thread, thick as the night just before a storm. The stars look like they're trembling, but only just. Maybe it's the candlelight. Maybe it's you. The fire pops quietly behind you. One of the logs lets out a sigh, as if it too has had a long day of holding stories. Here, the sky gives way to earth, a forest edge, a village in silhouette, and a small child pointing upward at a streak in the heavens. You wonder if that child is real, or remembered, or simply imagined into wool. The weaver shifts the loom slightly, revealing the lower section of the tapestry. Sometimes, she says, without turning, they believed comets caused people to speak languages they didn't know. A baker falling down some stairs. A dog chasing a comet shadow like a moth. The universe, rendered in the smallness of daily absurdities. She smiles, not quite amused. Solid, patient. You wonder how many people have sat exactly where you're sitting. Probably a few. Probably none. In 1320, a man in Flanders reportedly woke after a comet and began speaking flawless Latin. Unfortunately, he was a stable boy. No one believed him. This one doesn't show a comet, but an eclipse. A black sun stitched over a medieval city. People in the street are kneeling, arms lifted. One woman holds a spoon for protection. Another clutches a cheese wheel. The tapestry includes a few whimsical elements, too small to notice at first. A donkey looking unimpressed. The loom creaks like an old boat, and the wool sighs against itself. The rhythmic sliding of the shuttle resumes, as comforting as rain on a window. You shift your weight and feel the stone beneath you. A tapestry across the room catches your eye. It's old or frayed at the edges, with colors that have softened into whispers. Like the stars above, soft, persistent, and slowly falling. It's unclear whether this was a metaphor or a gardening complaint. Medieval handwriting was a little vague on tone. Ah, yes, the weaver says, still looking up. Around them, the forest is detailed with minute embroidery. A fox, a badger, even a snail with what appears to be a halo. You wonder what their comet meant. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. The eclipse of 1239. People thought the sun had been stolen. One nobleman offered his entire wine cellar as ransom. The sun returned. He did not get the wine back. Scholars still argue over whether the eclipse caused mass hysteria. She stares into the tapestry, not seeing it so much as listening, or just mild confusion with a side of theatrical prayer. The cat by the hearth yawns dramatically, revealing tiny teeth. It stands, turns in a slow, deliberate circle, and lies back down facing the wall now. Clearly, it has opinions. The weaver places her shuttle down. Her hands rest in her lap. Outside, wind stirs the trees. The world seems to be exhaling. She begins again, but slower this time. You must understand, she says gently. People needed meaning. The sky was too big not to talk back. In one obscure German manuscript, a note was scribbled into the margin. The sky weeps fire, and the cabbage wilts. You glance again at the child in the tapestry, still pointing. The fire dins slightly. The room darkens in sympathy. You feel the tug of sleep, not urgent, just inevitable. The room feels smaller now. Not in a claustrophobic way, more like a page that's gently folding inward, cozy and inevitable. You settle deeper against the stones as the loom clicks on. The Black Death. A comet was painted onto church walls, hastily scrawled with soot and chalk. Its long white tail trailed behind it like a divine accusation. Of course, the comet didn't bring the plague. Fleas did. But fleas weren't nearly as poetic. The tapestries seemed to shimmer gently. Not moving exactly, but not still either. It feels heavier than the others, like a silence that's listening. Not exactly a lullaby, but here, even catastrophe arrives on tiptoe. The people said the sky had gone into mourning. Someone thought it swallowed a comet. Others said the stars had flown south for better weather. The weaver dips her head back to the loom, and the wool whispers its soft song once again. Steady and thoughtful, like an old friend telling a story they've told 100 times but still love. The weaver pauses to sip something steaming from a pewter cup. A comet passed over northern France during lambing season. The locals claimed the lambs born that week had oddly shaped ears. Some said it was a blessing, others a warning. One lamb, allegedly, bleated in Latin. Most scholars agree this was either exaggeration or a very confused monk. The smell reaches you, herbs tucked into the clouds, barely visible. Tiny stitched shapes, circles, arrows, keys. Maybe astrological, maybe just doodles, maybe lavender and sage, or something stranger like a drink meant to calm the stars. She sets the cup down. Collective weeping. One monk reportedly tried to catch the tail with a fishing pole. He was canonically unsuccessful. In 1347, she says, voice soft, a comet passed. People said it burned a hole in the sky so the plague could slip through. You blink slowly. In many towns, historians still debate whether the fear of the comet made things worse. Mass gatherings. The weaver resumes her work. The wool thread glows slightly in the candlelight, one strand catching the flame just enough to gleam like starlight. In the tapestry, the comet's tail now trails across a mountaintop, arcing downward toward a tiny city clustered like sleeping mice. You notice something new. Symbols. Everyone saw something different, the weaver says. To a farmer, a comet meant frost. To a merchant, famine. To a poet. She pauses. Well, they usually just made it rhyme. A gust of wind presses against the window panes. The weaver doesn't look up, but she smiles. In 1352, you glance around the hall. One in the far corner catches your attention. It's almost entirely night sky. No villages, no people. Just black wool, thick with stars. The weaver sees you looking. That one, she says. The night without end. You wait. In 1374, clouds covered the heavens for 39 days. She chuckles softly. Sometimes we didn't need comets. Sometimes we just needed an excuse. The fire flickers lower. The shadows begin to settle like well-behaved cats. You don't try to make sense of the stars anymore. You just let them fall. You awaken, if that's the word for it, not from sleep exactly, but from something adjacent, a kind of woolen trance. The world remains wrapped in golden dusk, suspended like the moment before a yawn. You think you've heard the melody before, perhaps in a childhood dream, or in the quiet between 2 pages of a forgotten book. The weaver's still at her loom, but now she's humming. Not tuneless, not quite. I once knew a woman, she begins, who claimed a comet turned her husband into a better listener. You wait. There's more. Less arguing. More sweeping. Said it humbled him. She said every time it returned, he got quiet. Below, a family gathers in a field, tiny, bent figures wrapped in cloaks, looking upward as a comet slices across their stitched horizon. One child clutches a carved wooden duck, a detail too small for anyone but the weaver to notice. And you, one scribe wrote that the comet caused his ink to spoil. His diary ends abruptly, mid-sentence, right after, "It's blinking at me. I do not care for it." You smile faintly. The weaver shrugs. Or maybe he just liked the comet. In 1382, a particularly bright comet passed over Paris. Some nobles declared it an omen of peace. Others stockpiled cheese and weapons. Historians still argue whether this was metaphor or mildew. He said they twirled above the bell tower for 7 minutes before vanishing. She grins. Tonight's tapestry is nearly finished. The stars at the top twinkle in silk thread, whimsical, far off, or laughter, or dreams leaving footprints in the frost. Improbable, never dark. The stars keep it alight, like twin brushstrokes from a tipsy angel. You reach out, not to touch, just to trace the air beside it. She speaks again, voice barely above the click of the shuttle. They believed comets were the breath of angels, or the sparks from a blacksmith god, or the light from heaven's windows left slightly ajar. The fire sighs. The weaver leans back, and for a long moment nothing moves but the dust dancing in candlelight. You wonder if any of them ever just thought, "Hey, that's pretty." The scent softens the room even more. She smooths the next thread carefully, as if laying it into a cradle. The cat stretches again. This time, it ambles toward the tapestry, sniffs at a trailing bit of wool, and decides against mischief. Small miracles. The weaver dips her hands into a wooden bowl beside her, moistening her fingers with rose water. In a monastery once, she says, a monk claimed he saw 2 comets dancing. You raise an eyebrow. He was known to enjoy his wine. But still, she stitched them anyway, 2 spiraling comets at the edge of the current tapestry. Outside, the wind has settled into a lullaby. The trees whisper. You think you hear something like bells. The room is dim now, but not dark. The loom slows. You watch her hands rest, fingers gently curled like they've remembered something tender. The tapestry stretches before you both, a world of thread and silence. She doesn't speak for a while, and neither do you. Some parts of history prefer to breathe on their own. Eventually, she says, people used to think if you stared too long at a comet, it would steal your memory. According to one merchant's ledger, sales of garlic tripled overnight. Why garlic? No one knows. The pages also mention a donkey refusing to eat, a neighbor's door swinging open with no wind, and 3 hens that laid square eggs. Were these omens? Or just Tuesday? As if you could bounce disaster back into the stars. She chuckles. Maybe that's why no one remembered to write down anything useful. In 1402, a comet passed over the Iberian Peninsula. It's brittle with age. You watch her test it, carefully, before committing it to the fabric. Historians are, understandably, conflicted. You lean into the warmth of the hearth again. The cat is gone, perhaps off to patrol the shadows or nap in another century. This one shows a castle on a cliff with a swirling comet above it, more like a celestial hurricane than a tail. At the base of the castle, stitched villagers hold up mirrors to the sky. You're not afraid, just curious in the slowest possible way. You're not sure time works the same way in rooms like this. It flows like thread looping back on itself, never quite straight. One of them has clearly dropped theirs and is screaming about it. On the wall, a newer tapestry waits its turn on the loom. In some places, the weaver explains, they believed comets could be reflected away. There's a sad kind of charm in that, isn't there? You can't see his face, but you get the feeling he's asking the sky for something. She reaches for a thread dyed deep green, almost moss, almost jealousy. Dye like this came from woad, she murmurs. A plant so pungent the dyers had to work in sheds away from the village. Not because of the smell, supposedly, but because of superstition. People believed they'd been touched by otherworldly color, and possibly poor hygiene. In some towns, the woad dyers were forbidden to marry. The weaver knots the green in tightly. It winds around a hilltop where a lone shepherd kneels, maybe for a sign, maybe just for better sheep. The comet above him curls like a question mark. Outside, something rustles the ivy near the window. The candles tremble. You resist the urge to turn. The tapestry continues to grow. You're not sure how much time has passed. The weaver leans forward and whispers, not to you, but to the cloth. Tell it softly, she says. The stars are still listening. You've stopped wondering how long you've been here. Time has become something you wear now, like warmth or weariness. It fits loosely and smells of ash and wool. The weaver doesn't look tired, though. If anything, she seems more awake than ever. Her eyes catch the candlelight like old glass crackled and glowing. In 1433, she says, a comet appeared just after the harvest. The fields were bare, the granaries full, and still. They panicked. Someone even blamed it for their horse refusing to trot in a straight line. The figures in this tapestry were concerned like cloaks. One woman holds a loaf of bread in one hand and a sword in the other. Her expression is undecided. She threads ochre into the sky sunset shades for a field just harvested. They thought the comet would sour the grain, the weaver explains, or spoil the wine. Light flurries drifting down around the grain fields. The horse, stitched into the corner, indeed looks mildly insubordinate. Some called it a war star, others a wedding omen, that it had breathed cold into the world like a cosmic sigh. One French poet wrote that it reminded him of his lost love's hair. Judging by the comet's trajectory, his love had terrible bangs. Historians agree that the 1433 comet was unusually bright. It lingered in the sky like an awkward guest who won't leave. A few stars peek out from behind it, like shy guests at a divine banquet. You smile to yourself. The weaver changes threads again, this time to a pale, smoky blue. She begins to stitch what appears to be snow. It rattles softly when the wind nudges the wall. You wonder if it was meant to scare spirits or invite them. In one village, she continues, people believed the comet had cooled the sun. Not angry, necessarily, just restless. Like stars with unfinished sentences. They roasted apples, lit herbs, and wore extra scarves even indoors. One man reportedly swaddled his cow. The cow, according to records, did not object. To counter it, they built fires and sang to the sky. She leans back. The fire has almost gone out now, but you can still see. You notice the fire in the hearth is dwindling. The weaver doesn't move to tend it. She lets it fade on its own terms. Some said the comet was a key, she says suddenly. You turn your head. A key to what? She smiles faintly. That's the part no one agreed on. The tapestry she's working on shows a doorway in the clouds, a bright thread of silver outlining the frame. Near the doorway, a stitched figure small, cloaked stands with arms outstretched, not walking forward, just waiting. You breathe out slowly. The room breathes with you. Above the loom, on a high beam, hangs a tiny wind chime made of sheep bones. In some regions, comets were believed to bring ghosts. Ancestors stirred by the sky's sudden brightness. The weaver tucks the final thread into the sky and smooths it with her palm. The stars, after all, are bright enough on their own. The fire has finally gone out. What remains is a curl of warm smoke, twining into the rafters like a forgotten thought. Her joints crack like old wood stretching. She walks to the edge of the room, where a new bundle of wool rests in a wicker basket, each skein a slightly different shade of twilight. The room doesn't feel cold, though. Not really. The walls have stored the heat, or perhaps the stories have. The weaver stands for the first time in hours. "You know," she says as she chooses a charcoal gray thread, "in 1456, when Halley's comet returned, Pope Calixtus III issued a papal bull against it. Whether the bells worked or not is up for debate, but Halley's comet kept moving, as comets tend to do, unrepentant, unmothered. You blink. He tried to excommunicate the comet." She raises an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the moment. The Vatican archives are oddly quiet on the matter. It didn't respond. Apparently, he also ordered extra bell ringing and prayers, just in case celestial fireballs could be intimidated. Historians still disagree on whether the papal bull was symbolic or literal. The weaver sets the gray thread into her lap, running it through her fingers like it might whisper a secret. Why not? They blamed it on a comet that had appeared a week earlier. They were afraid of light, she says, but more afraid of the things it might reveal. Another said his eels sang an opera aria that same night. This one is chaotic fiery reds and uneasy yellows. People run. Flames twist. A comet overhead seems to have teeth. She begins a new tapestry. No people. No animals. Just the building and a thin white thread arcing across the heavens above it. This one is sparse and open sky with a single church below. A second comet, fainter, curving in the opposite direction. You watch her draw the comet's trail delicately this time, like a scar the sky chose to wear. Just a reminder, the sky rarely tells only one story. Another said it sounded like bees arguing. There's a kind of reverence to this one. In Hungary, she adds, some said the comet brought a white noise, a hum only monks could hear. One abbey claimed it sang psalms. You smile, almost involuntarily. A choir of cosmic bees. In a quiet alcove of the room, an older tapestry hangs half-hidden behind others. That one's from Florence, the weaver says, after a market fire. One fish seller claimed he'd seen the comet wink. Neither were considered reliable witnesses, she adds. You lie back again, eyes half closed now. The room softens. Your breath slows. Outside, the stars remain. Still there, still falling. Still not particularly interested in human politics. The loom groans as she adjusts the frame, the sound low and ancient. Above the church in the new tapestry, she adds something faint, almost invisible. Not a contradiction. You're almost not awake anymore. That strange middle space where thought has texture and time is kind has fully settled over you. The loom's rhythm becomes a lullaby. The weaver's voice is low, distant, the sound of memory threading itself into your chest. In 1472, a comet came so close, people thought it might land. She threads another silver strand into the sky. In Prague, someone tried to catch it with a basket, a rather large one, woven from reeds and the delusions of optimism. Long enough to become part of furniture talk, harvest predictions, and at least 3 awkward marriage proposals. One man carved its likeness into a wooden spoon and offered it to his beloved. She declined. The comet didn't land, of course, but it was visible for over 2 months. Still, the weaver sighs. He tried. For once, the sky was consistent, almost polite. That comet passed so brightly that astronomers could record its movement nightly. A comet loops above, golden and absurdly long, like the tail of a vain cat. You glance at her tapestry in progress. This one shows rooftops at dusk, some half-finished, some crumbling. In one window, a woman peeks out, clearly startled. Her hand covers her mouth. You tilt your head. You wonder what she sees? Omen? Miracle? Or simply sky being sky? One star, maybe Jupiter, pulses brighter through the window pane. It's not real, but I made it up. Just one line. The heavens opened. I made soup. The tapestry is almost complete. One final thread hangs loose, waiting to be tied. She wrote about it, the weaver says, in the margins of her family recipe book. You exhale slowly. Sometimes that's all you can do, make soup beneath the vastness. Another obscure tapestry hangs near the door. This one entirely black, save for 3 red dots and 1 green star stitched in the lower left corner. No one really knows what it was. A monk in Krakow wrote it down. No drawings, no explanations, just that phrase. The night of 4 lights, she explains. You let that sit in your mind. The night of 4 lights feels like a song or a story half told. The weaver tightens the tension of the loom. The strings hum like distant harp notes. You watch the shuttle flick back and forth, like a pendulum trying not to make decisions. Outside, owls stir. The branches sway. There's a word, the weaver says after a long silence. Astronomy. She looks over at you. It means the feeling of not knowing if the sky forgot you or remembered you too well. You nod, or maybe you dream that you do. The weaver holds it in her palm a moment, then knots it gently. There. Done. The sky, for now, has been stitched quiet. The tapestry rests now, draped over the lower beam of the loom like a sleeping thing. The stars in it are still fixed in their woolen sky, but your mind keeps wandering among them, retracing their silver threads, their silent arcs, the way one tiny village chimney smokes ever so faintly near the bottom corner. The weaver begins preparing a new warp. The long vertical threads, pale and tight, form the skeleton of everything to come. She works slowly, reverently, as if laying down the outline of another universe. You tilt your head. In 1490, a comet appeared and no one seemed to care. This next one, she says, is about forgetting. She shrugs, selecting a soft shade of pearl gray yarn. There were no great disasters. No kings died. No floods. The villagers insisted they hummed sea shanties at night. One monk recorded the event in a journal full of half-finished prayers and fish sketches. Scholars are, understandably, torn. Pass by like a cat through a crowded room, regal and wholly uninterested in your panic. Just a bright thing in the sky that made no demands. You find that strangely comforting. Not every celestial event has to come with thunder and prophecy. Some comets just... Still, in one fishing village off the coast of Brittany, the comet was blamed for a strange catch of jellyfish that glowed in the dark. You hadn't noticed it before. It depicts an orchard at dusk, with fruit falling gently from the trees and a boy sitting under one, watching the sky. Even when we ignore the stars, they still leave a mark. but nobody remembered the melody. Some are just reminders. Tiny boats bob on the surface, their sails curved just slightly. No storm, no drama, just ocean. Above them, the faint suggestion of a comet's tail. The windows bead with droplets, each one catching light like a tiny universe. The weaver's new tapestry begins with water. Slow, undulating threads of blue and green, stitched with the patience of tides. You see? She murmurs. She points to a figure in one of the boats barely 2 stitches wide, holding a net in one hand and a pipe in the other. He wrote a song about the comet, she says. Outside, rain begins. Not the dramatic kind, just a soft brushing sound, like someone sweeping the sky. The fire's gone completely out now, but you feel no chill. The tapestries seem to hold the warmth. One, near your side, is stitched in pale golds and rosewood reds. A comet sails above him, barely there. He doesn't look frightened. He looks curious. The weaver's shuttle slows. Not all omens are warnings, she says. There is a pause, a real one. The weaver sits back, folds her hands in her lap. You hear nothing now but the rain and the soft hiss of candle wicks holding on. Even the cat, wherever it is, has decided that movement is overrated. The loom is still. Then she stands quietly and walks to a chest in the far corner. It's old, not touching, just following its shape with your breath. There's a thing they don't write down, she says. Not in the books, not in the letters. You wait. The gold arc above the village glows softly in the candlelight. How it pressed on your chest, like it was reminding you, you're very small, but very seen, never changing, always just arriving. The world is still, but the stars, they're always on the move, even when they don't mean anything. Older even than the stone around it, with iron latches and burn marks, and one side bowed slightly from damp. Not a comet exactly, but something close. A long curve of pale gold, dotted with tiny stars that seem to shimmer even in the woven sunrise. She says, and she doesn't sound frustrated by that. She sounds grateful. She opens it with effort, not because it's locked, but because it remembers being needed. Inside, tapestries, smaller ones. You stand to look. The surface trembles slightly under the weight of old thread and older memory. This one is different. Rolled, faded, the weaver says. That's what they called it. She chooses one and unrolls it across a table. It isn't night. It's dawn. Windows aglow. One man standing outside his door with a broom and a suspicious chicken at his feet. The sky is stitched with soft peaches and blue lavenders, the kind of colors that only last 5 minutes in the real world, but live forever in wool. A strange glowing cloud appeared in the sky. No tail, no movement, just dot, dot, dot presence. For 2 weeks it hovered, changed shape, then disappeared. Some said it was a comet that lost its way. Others thought it was a hole in heaven. One noblewoman declared it was an angel with a backache. There's a village waking up smoke rising from chimneys. Crops grew. Rivers stayed in their beds. No one died. At least, not unusually. And above them, a false comet. In 1499, nothing came of it. Historians still don't know what it was. You run your hand gently above the tapestry. The weaver returns to the loom, not to work, but to rest against it. She watches you watching. Then she speaks again. They don't say how quiet it felt when the sky changed. A single bell tolls somewhere in the distance. or perhaps only in your head. The rain has stopped. The windows gleam with mist. You are still, especially then. The mist has thickened outside, wrapping the stone hall like a second skin. The world beyond the windows has disappeared entirely, as if the stars themselves have closed their curtains for the night. Inside, everything is softer, quieter. It flickers to life, trembling a bit like even fire needs to stretch after sitting too long. She returns to her loom, not with urgency, but with ceremony. There is no such thing as haste here, only rhythm, threaded with stillness. The weaver lights a new candle, its flame slow to catch. Dogs chained, doors bolted. A priest raising a hand toward an empty night. She threads a deep indigo strand, darker than night. It spills across her lap like ink. Then she begins. This one, she says, is the comet that never came. You frown slightly, but she smiles. A man in Lubeck even built a model of it out of driftwood. In 1506, astrologers across Europe predicted a comet. They drew charts, made announcements. Preachers warned. Merchants panicked. People stayed indoors. This one's asleep, slumped against a basket of apples. You're not surprised. Medieval chickens were often considered minor prophets. Not very accurate, but passionate. She shrugs as she works. It never showed up. Only when no one was listening. You watch the tapestry grow. A village huddled inside. Windows shuttered. Children looking up at blank skies. Above them all, nothing. Just black wool. Empty sky. And still, she says, they remembered it. A comet that didn't come. They made art, poems. No villagers, no fear, just trees. A comet hovers above the treetops, casting a faint light on leaves that don't stir. One wonders if he ever got around to throwing it away. A few believe the comet came and was simply ... ignored. The scent of old wool, candle smoke, and something sweet, maybe honey, hangs in the air. Historians still puzzle over it. Some claim the calculations were simply off. Others say it passed unseen in daylight. Maybe that was its miracle, the weaver muses. To pass by without needing applause. She smiles faintly as she stitches a chicken into the lower right corner of the tapestry. You lie back once more. Near the loom, a finished tapestry depicts a starburst above a quiet forest. They said comets could make the woods sing, she says. The shuttle clicks again, back and forth. You're not sure whether you're still awake, but it doesn't really matter now. There is no introduction to this one, no explanation. The weaver simply begins. The tapestry she starts is unlike the others, chaotic, jagged, all sharp lines and restless color. Reds, golds, black. The threads seem to resist each other, tangling slightly, pulling at odd angles. She doesn't smooth them. She lets them fight. In 1527, she says, a comet passed over Rome. You can feel the shift in her voice. Heavier, slower, not sad, exactly, but weighted. A painter threw down his brushes. A bishop reportedly tried to climb into a well. They called it the Blood Star. People saw it and wept in the streets. The sack of Rome happened that year. The city fell into chaos. Death, fear, fire, all while the sky burned. Some said the comet caused it. Others said it merely pointed. Horses scatter. A scroll unravels in one corner, its text unreadable. Above it all, the comet, vast and merciless, cuts through the sky like judgment. The tapestry grows darker. Buildings crumble. It glows a little brighter. You feel yourself holding your breath. The weaver stops suddenly. But, she says, in one street near the Tiber, a woman gave birth that night. A boy. They named him Luca. He survived. She threads a new color. Pale blue, almost invisible. In the corner, you'll see them, she says. Wrapped in a blanket, tucked beside the wreckage. You look. There they are. A mother holding her newborn. A single stitched candle beside them. The rest of the scene stays dark. But that corner, that thread, she finishes the final line of thread and ties it in a soft knot, tucking it into the wool like a secret. Outside, the mist is thinning. You think you see the faintest glimmer of dawn. Sometimes, she says, the stars don't mean destruction, just change. Historians still debate the significance of that particular comet. Some call it a harbinger. Others call it coincidence wrapped in flame. The weaver doesn't seem interested in choosing. Then very gently, she folds the tapestry. Not rolled, folded, like a letter someone might someday read. The hall is quieter now, not just with silence, but with completion. The loom sits still, the last tapestry folded neatly at its base. Candlelight has softened to a gentle gold, and the sky beyond the windows. A single shoemaker in Zurich stitched a silver thread into each pair he sold that month. No explanation given. Has begun to glow just barely like a page the mists are lifting. Only your breath remains long, slow, quiet. Heavy where you need grounding. Light where you need drift. The kind of breath that remembers mossy paths and candlelit stories. Trees reappear. The outline of a hillside. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like waves. Like lullabies. Like time mending itself. The faintest morning birdsong. Being let go of meaning. Let go of time. Turned at. Curved like a question. Or an old story you've almost forgotten. The edge of sleep. You notice, for the first time, how many tapestries there are. She says, lining the walls, it's made for display. The space inside it holds nothing but air and possibility. Of course, not until Hallie noticed it came back every 76 years. But even then, people felt the pattern. Stacked in cedar-lined chests, draped over benches and stools. The comet didn't bring war, or plague, or dancing jellyfish. She nods. This one doesn't get stitched, she says. It lives in remembering. You exhale. Just wonder. Blinking slowly, and curls into a basket without ceremony. The fire pit is empty now, but the stones hold warmth. Hundreds, maybe more. A fabric galaxy. She stands beside you, holding a new skein of thread. Not to weave, just to hold. It glows faintly in the dim light, a strange color between moonstone and memory. There's one more. You follow her to the far wall, where an empty frame waits. Unlike the other looms, this one isn't made for weaving. In 1531, Halley's comet came again. She says softly. It wasn't called that yet, this time. In cities across Europe, people walked into fields at night to watch. Sailors wrote about it in their logbooks. Bakers shaped loaves to match its curve. No tragedies followed. No kings died. The comet came, it glowed, and it went. Quietly. They called it the brushstroke of God, she murmurs. And for once, nobody screamed. You look at the empty loom. She places the pale thread beside the frame and steps back. That's the thing about stars, she adds. You never really own them. You just try to catch the shimmer. The cat reappears. Outside, you realize the night is over. But it didn't end. It folded, like cloth, like time. And now, dear traveler, you lie still. The weaver has vanished into the hush. The loom rests, the tapestries sleep. Let the soft weight of the night settle over you like wool. In the distance, the last stars fade, not with urgency, but with a kind of sleepy generosity, giving the sun its turn and you your rest. The hall around you blurs at the edges. The tapestries, once vivid, soften into dreams. Threads unravel into clouds. Candles melt into dawn. You might still hear the shuttle, if you listen closely. You might even see the comet, not above you, but inside stitched across the ceiling of your quiet mind. And maybe, just maybe, the stars are gone. They've only been woven into you. Now close your eyes. Let your breath deepen. Let your thoughts become thread-fine, loose, and gently tangled. Tonight, you have been a witness to the sky, and now you rest beneath it. Good night, traveler. Sleep well. The stars will still be falling when you wake.